Hi everyone, welcome. Hello. Gonna ask everyone to maybe mute themselves if they're not currently speaking. Awesome. And we'll just give it a second to let everyone filter in. All right. I think we're likely to have more people jumping in um, as we go, but maybe we'll begin and we'll let them join. Um, Hello and welcome to Art Centers as Community Spaces. It's not showing up. Okay. Just stop my share here. It's nice to see everyone. I'm so excited that we're at the 5th workshop in our Transforming the Touring Sector series, which is all about slow touring. We're just the Slow Touring Project is a project of Ontario Presents. The latest phase is funded thanks to the Canada Council for the Arts, and it is in partnership with De Majig Theatre, Hayles Spark Network, and Folk Music Ontario, which is actually Folk Music Canada now. And we've been working in many different ways to try to improve the touring and presenting sector in Canada to be at the intersection of better for climate justice, better for people for well-being, to increase artists' capacity to take creative risks. We feel that slowness and slowing down is kind of at the intersection of all of these things. And uh, part of this project is hosting a workshop series so that we can all dive into these topics a little further. I am going to quickly share our community agreement here and then turn it over to our first guest. And I apologize because my computer's being oddly slow today. So the community agreement is kind of our housekeeping notes that we came up with during our slow touring meetings. And it's an agreement because I hope you'll all agree with these principles. And if you have any other requests, feel free to put them in the chat. So it's great if you can change your Zoom name to include your actual name, perhaps add your organization and pronouns if either of those are relevant. Feel free to have your camera on or off. Feel free to eat or move around or take breaks. You never need to apologize for those things, for taking care of your body. We're not super formal here, so feel free to communicate throughout in the chat using the emoji or reaction button. And then there'll also be time for speaking questions or comments out loud in the second half. We try to keep it as a no judgment zone, knowing that sometimes we have disagreements on these topics and there are mistakes made, and we accept those from each other as long as intentions are good. Automatic captioning is available on this meeting. You can turn captions on or off. Usually it's under the ellipses symbol where it says more, it says captions. We are recording today, so feel free to keep your camera off if you don't want to be a part of that. And we are making the video recording available to everyone who registered after the session. Usually takes us about a week to get stuff emailed out, but we will share recap notes and this recording. And finally, we will have a short bio break about halfway through the session, aiming to have that right around 2 o'clock. So those are my housekeeping notes, and that means that we could dive in. I'm first going to turn it over to Veronica Johnny, who is an artist educator and a rock musician and has been a participant in some of the slow touring pilot projects that were happening this past year. is a wonderful colleague who is going to welcome us and get us started in a good way. So, hi, Veronica. Over to you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Tansei, Ani, bonjour. Veronica, Johnny, and Sikasan, Niane, Hiao, Esqueo. So I said, hello, my name's Veronica Johnny. I'm a Cree woman. I have many different bloodlines, including Cree Métis on my mom's side and Dene Scottish on my dad's side. I'm a member of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation of Alberta, and I'm coming to you from Toronto, the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat people, and I know I'm missing somebody, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat people. I also want to acknowledge the stewards of the land, both recorded and unrecorded, since time immemorial, both the land and water. So it's my pleasure and honor to be invited once again to this event, and as well as being an Ontario Presents Slow Tour recipient. I'm very grateful for the work that I've been doing, and so it's an honor to join you, and it's an honor to be involved, especially with the Bajmajig Theatre Group as also one of the members, which is a beautiful arts organization. We're here to talk about art spaces as community. Bajmajig is one of the best spaces you could ever find yourself in. So anytime that you find yourself on Manitoulin Island, please make it part of your stop, if not your destination, to go to the Bajmajig Theatre Group. I encourage you to look them up. The Bajmajig means storyteller in Anishinaabe. So I'm going to start, I've already done a tobacco offering, which is our way to ask for more support. So part of my asking was to bring in whatever was required for those present. So whatever it is that you need in your life right now, whether it's peace, joy, happiness, bliss, the goals that you have set for yourself. That's my wish, is that you move forward in whatever it is that you're moving forward in today, that you can let go of whatever it is that you need to let go. So I'm going to be offering a smudge. This is what we call a cleansing ceremony. And so this is sage and sweetgrass and cedar mixed together. And so as I'm lighting these dried medicines, these leaves, I'm saying thank you for the medicine. So starting with gratitude and also respect for fire. It's an open flame, so we have to always be respectful of that. And then asking the universal energies to bring in what is needed. So if you pray in your way. If you don't pray, just think of, imagine the things that you need in your own life, and imagine what you need to let go of, so that you can live your true life. Not your true life, sorry, your true destiny, whatever it is that you're here to do. So take a nice deep breath in and ground yourself in your way. And my grandmother always said, everybody has their own way. So whatever it is your way, just trust that. Whatever your beliefs are, trust them. Whatever, stand and think about your own life, your own family, honor them. So we'll see what the grandmothers want to sing today. Please let me know in the chat if you can't hear it, or if we're having technical difficulties. So those were the honor beats for the 4 directions. So I want to give gratitude for the sacred items that are present. This drum, thank you, this drum, and the sacred items that are helping me to do this work and to tune into the energies to bring in whatever it is that needs to be brought in this moment. Hi, and Askamon. the song that's coming in is a song to help us release. So it's called Not My Spirit. Because so many of us go through things in life and where we might be harmed in some way, whether it's emotionally or physically. And this song that came through was for some of the work that I've been doing in community. And it's called Not My Spirit because whatever harm may come to you in this world, it never touches your spirit. So that's my belief. So that's what this song is about. And this is for you. We go through the pronouns. We're going to start with my, and then we go to her, and then his, and then their, and then our, and then back to my. So take this opportunity, if you wish, to just relax, or more importantly, to release. My body harmed, my body scarred, but not my spirit. Now you. My body harmed, my body scarred, but not my spirit. Her body harmed, her body scarred, but not her spirit. Her body harmed, her body scarred, but not her spirit. His body harmed, his body scarred, but not his spirit. His body harmed, his body scarred, but not his spirit. Their body harmed, their body scarred, but not their spirit. Their body harmed, their body scarred, but not their spirit. Our bodies harmed, our bodies scarred, but not our spirits. Our bodies harmed, our bodies scarred, but not our spirits. My body harmed, my body scarred, but not my spirit. My body harmed, my body scarred, but not my spirit. Not my spirit. Not my spirit. A little bit of joy at the end. Ooh! Yasin, oh mom. Okay. Well, whatever comes through today for you, I hope that it was something good that you needed, and it's always a pleasure to help people connect to their spirits, help people connect to the elements, help people connect to where they are, what land base they're on, and hopefully you sang. I love it when people sing along with me. I love it when people sing, because singing is one of the 7 ways we heal. So it's something that I think that we should all do every day, as well as dance. Do it every day. Talk to people that you love, that love you. Sing with them, dance with them. Cry with them, scream with them, shake with them, laugh with them. Those are the 7 natural ways we heal. And if you want to know more about me, just go to my website, IndigenEd.ca, or if you want to know about my rock band, The Johnnies, go to thejohnnies.com. And thank you so much again, Kaylee, and everybody at Ontario Presents. This has just been lovely. I'm so sorry I can't stay for the entire event, but I wish you well, and hopefully I'll get to see the recording when it's out.
Thank you, Veronica. Hi. I so appreciate you being here. And Veronica has done the opening for all 5 of these workshops. So I want to thank you for the whole series, for keeping us grounded and starting us off well. I completely agree that song and dance are healing, and I think that's a perfectly appropriate way to start a conversation about how arts centers can play a huge role in our communities. So, what a perfect way to begin. Thank you, Veronica.
Hi, hi. Nanas, come on. Kisakitin.
So, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for today, Aislinn Rose. Aislinn is a creative producer, a theater maker, and she is the general and artistic director of the Theater Center, which is just down the street from where I live, where I am right now. And I have admired the Theater Center for years, not just because I've seen great plays there, but because I've been to or seen from afar many community events, many ways that the Theater Center has made an effort to be a part of our neighborhood Parkdale community, more than just presenting shows, and also the way the Theater Center has been a huge part of the artistic community, supporting artists and theater makers in Toronto. And I've been to many fun events there in that capacity as well. So over to you, Aislinn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Kaylee and Ontario Presents. And oh, that's me very big on the screen. And thank you, Veronica. Thank you so much for that. I'm zooming into you today from Takaranto, where the trees stand in water. Um, and thank you for the introduction, Kaylee. Just an apology in advance. I was ill over the weekend, so my voice is not what it normally is, and if I have to mute to cough from now and again, please do forgive me for that. I'm planning to talk mostly casually about what we do. I love talking about the theater center. It's my favorite place in the world. And that predates, I should say, that predates my time working at the theater center. And goes back to my predecessor, Franco Boni, who was the artistic director before I was. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today will include, references to Franco and the work that we did together in the first 5 years that our building was opened at 1115 Queen Street West. I'm just going to show you a photo from. Here we are. This is it. Um, Whenever I tour people through the building, this is a look at well, it's really a look at the audience from the stage of our Franco Boni Theater. Um, and yes, we do have a theater that's named after an artist and the former artistic director, which I think speaks a lot to the nature of our organization and the space. We had a really wonderful board member, uh, Bob Sermon, who helped us acquire a $500,000 capital gift that was from Margaret McCain. And not only did he secure that gift, but he asked if the theater could be named after the artistic director whose vision made the space possible in the first place. The space was open in 2014. And we had this really wonderful community event where we got to announce that the space was being named after Franco, which he was mortified by, just to be clear. Um, but it was such a wonderful thing to have a space named after an artist and an artistic leader. If you look at spaces across the city, around the country, most of them are named after, the families who made the donations, or banks. We have a space downstairs that's the BMO incubator for live art, and we're obviously always grateful for these gifts that make these spaces possible. But it's so rare that we actually get to honor long term the artists who make these things possible. So here we are in the Franco Boni Theater, and when I bring guests into that space, I like to tell them that this room was once upon a time a reading room in what was then a Carnegie library. So the origins of the building was that it's over 100 years old. This space. It was a Carnegie library and was the local library branch for many, many years in this neighborhood until the Parkdale branch opened. And for then quite a long time, this space at 1115 Queen Street West was City of Toronto public health offices. So it went from this beautiful, uh, culturally important public space for community into closed off offices, inaccessible by the community for many years. And so a big part of the campaign to take over this space was the idea that we would be able to bring this space back to the community and back to being a community good. And Franco at the time was a member of a community group called Active 18. And that was when the ward and the riding that we're in now, I think we're now Ward 9, the Davenport riding. At the time, it was Ward 18. So that's hence the name of the group. And while we've only been in this building for 10 years, we've been in the neighborhood for decades. And so, Franco had been developing community relationships for years in this neighborhood, in the West Queen West neighborhood, and had them all on side then when he was putting this campaign together to essentially get the city to turn the building over to the theater center as an organization. And so I'll read the one piece of sort of prepared text that I have, and then I'll sort of speak to you more informally. So in 2014, the theater center went through a complete transformation as an organization. After 35 years of nomadic existence, the company moved into its new permanent home, the result of a successful $6.2 million capital campaign and 10 years of dreaming and planning. Gone were the days of our artists working in basements and other makeshift spaces. Suddenly, we had purpose-built rooms for creation and performance. And as we moved from an underground space in which we were almost singularly focused on the work of the artist and into a space with natural light and windows to the outside world, our focus shifted to developing an understanding in our new home of what our role was to be within our community and what our responsibility was to our neighbors. And we asked ourselves two guiding questions. Number one, what can a theater be to its community? And two, how can we be more generous? And so, turn this phone off. We began the work to occupy the point of intersection between various arts disciplines and the social sectors which work to affect positive change within communities, to become the hub around which many partners with a shared interest could come together to explore innovative solutions to some of our most pressing problems. And our varied activities eventually came to be defined under 5 interrelated pillars, one of them being creating work. So this is our residency program, which is at the heart of what we do, supporting artists over long periods of time, making big works, asking big questions. Producing, so we produce the work that comes out of the residency program. Presenting, we present national and international performances that place the work of Toronto artists in a global or national context and in an international conversation of new work.
Yeah.
Sorry, is there a question for me? Nope. Okay, sorry. I was hearing other voices. Is everything okay?
I think someone was maybe just accidentally unmuted and has.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So yes, we like to bring in work that helps put the work of the artists that we're working with into an international conversation of work. We then move the work. So we've been growing networks and managing touring opportunities for work developed in residency. And we try to do this from its earliest stages, so that as work is developed over a number of years, we are building relationships with the right presenters, festivals, producers internationally who gain an interest in the artist, the human being, the artist, and then the work that they're developing, so that as the work meets the stage in Toronto, there are already interested partners in other parts of the country or the world who can then take that work and bring it into their own programming. And then finally, sharing, which is this sort of, we called it a pillar, but maybe it's really the foundation for all of the pillars, which is this notion that resources go further when you share them. And so, yeah, within this pillar of sharing, we insisted on throwing our doors open and investing in a cafe whose glass walls invite the neighborhood inside to hang out, providing public space for people to gather. We hired a baker in residence and filled the streets and our offices with the dangerous aroma of baked goods. It's really the most dangerous part of working at the theater center. We launched monthly community meals and fed whoever showed up. And so from 2014 to 2019, uh, then General and Artistic Director Franco Boni and I, as creative producer at the time, took 5 years to explore and understand what was possible within this new world, within this new space. We expanded activity to support more artists in the residency program. We became one of the most in-demand venues and creative partners in the city. Applications to our residency program skyrocketed. And we were very quickly a going concern in the neighborhood, our cafe a bustling hub, 7 days a week from 7:30, 8 a.m. onward. And we were becoming much more involved with international touring. And eventually, as we saw what was made possible by throwing our doors open, we began to consider the second question that has driven us, which is the principle of generosity in a deeper way. And it was UK artist and friend Don Walton who introduced us to the notion of reckless generosity. We've been using the notion of generosity to guide us, but she talked to us about a reckless generosity, which was a term that came from screenwriter Frank Cottrell Boyce. And the notion of reckless generosity as the source of innovation. And really, it means embarking on a course of action without knowing where it will lead. It risks failure and it doesn't count on reward. And these words spoke to us and seemed to be describing the way we had been sharing our new space and resources to change the lives of artists and communities. And so, yeah, we opened the doors in 2014. We really threw those doors open. If you've been to the building, if you've had an opportunity to come by, and if you haven't, I hope that one day you will. You'll see, we have this beautiful heritage space, and then sort of added on is our cafe bar. It's the one piece of the building that was added on, and the design of that space was really intentional with the notion of sharing the space with the community. It's all window. And that was very much Franco thinking about how do we not only provide artists an opportunity to see outside, because again, we'd spent many years in literally a basement. And so now we had this opportunity to bring artists into a space where they could look outside and think about that metaphorically too, in terms of the work that they're making is created within a context. One of our firm beliefs at the theater center is that art is political, and that work is made in a context of a neighborhood, of a city, of a province, a country, a world. And what do we want to be within those, concentric circles? What role do we want to play? Why? What are we doing it for? And so, yeah, these windows so we can see out, but then also this opportunity for the community to see inside. And that was such a huge difference because again, the basement, you could be for years in West Queen West and never know that the theater center existed, in terms of the fact that it was deep in the bowels of the basement of a building, and with rats. And it was a beloved space, but it had the worst bathrooms in the city and rats, and I still miss it. And so one of the things that we did at one point, because we saw people would walk by, we were in a neighborhood where um, for years and years there were lots of uh, closed down, empty storefronts, and then all of a sudden it became the place for condos to be built. And over a period of about 10 to 15 years, condo after condo after condo went up, and this huge influx of population at the same time as a massive decrease in public space. So all of these new residents were coming into this neighborhood, and with nowhere actually for them to gather. And and so again, thinking about what role do we have in this very specific community. This is, to say to all of you with spaces that, the things that we're doing and the things that have worked for us are not necessarily just, copy paste. It's lots and lots of time and effort and investment. And what does our community need? And so we would see people sort of walking by the building and maybe kind of looking in the windows, but keep going. And at one point, we just painted words on the building. This is a cafe and a bar and a theater. Please come in. And immediately we could look out the window. We would see people walk, stop, read, turn around, and come in immediately. And it was interesting when we posted that image of that painting on social media. We had some theater folks reach out and say, I really wish it said theater first. And I said, well, these words are not for you because you're welcome here. And it's not unusual, like for you, that cultural spaces are for you because that's where you spend a lot of your time. And we believe that cultural space should be public space, but not a lot of cultural spaces necessarily operate in that way. A lot of cultural spaces, they open their doors, particularly for live art. They open the door about an hour before the show starts. And then once the show comes down, you're kind of pushed out of the building as quickly as possible, particularly if you're in a unionized space. And so what we wanted to do is different. What we wanted to do is say this is cultural space and that makes it public space. And so a lot of non sort of traditional theater going, arts going community members would look at a building that says the word theater on it and think that it's a space for them. So those words, this is a cafe and a bar and a theater, please come in, really had an amazing impact. And so I realize I'm probably running out of time here a little bit, but um, I just wanted to say, last year, 2024, sorry, what is time ever since COVID? I don't know what year it is. We celebrated 10 years. We celebrated 10 years in our forever home. Franco and I had worked very closely for those first 5 years together, and as I said, we spent those years trying to figure out what was possible in the new space. And then when I took over in the role of artistic director, knowing all of these things that were possible, then it was thinking about, okay, now what is most vital, and sort of honing in on those things. And so as we hit year 10, we wanted to celebrate our home in a way that really reflected this urge at our core to throw our doors open and ask, what can a theater be? And so we came up with our 10 for 10 program, which was 10 special events over 10 months, celebrating 10 years in the building. And once again, came back to that question, what can a theater be? So over those 10 months, maybe I'll share something different for a moment. Give me one second. I'm going to share this one here. Full screen. Here we go. Um, so for instance, so we started in March of 2024, and we threw a massive party. We had a really amazing big party, took over the whole building, and it was really wonderful. We saw people from who'd had connection to the theater center over its sort of 45 year lifespan. So many folks that I'd known from theater center, 2 decades past, saying, "My God, it's everyone here's so young. Who are all of these people?" And they were like the next generation of theater center community members, and it was so nice to see also, you know, a room filled with people that I knew, and also a room filled with people that I didn't know, but that were there because they had some connection to the space in a different way. And so we threw a party in March. April, we had free jazz concerts to celebrate Jazz Appreciation Month, and they were family friendly events. Um, in um, May, I'm trying to remember all of the things that we did now. June, we brought back our May we did Doors Open. Maybe did finally we're able to do Doors Open with the City of Toronto, and we had hundreds of people come through the building that weekend, and we put up a small sidewalk cafe. We did a mini version of our cafe that I sort of hosted with our managing director, Audrey Kwan, and our associate artistic director, Liza Paul. The three of us ran the outdoor cafe and just spoke to neighbors. And the number of people that came by and said, I've been wanting to come in. I didn't know if I was cool enough to come in. So we're constantly remembering that we need to repeat ourselves, that you are welcome here. We want you here. That, saying it once doesn't break down the years and years and years and years of perceived barriers about who these spaces are for. Um, and it was an amazing, like, I couldn't believe how many that, those many hours of working in that sidewalk cafe just flew past. June, we brought back our night shift program where we turned the building over to a night shift of artists for a week who worked then from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. And then did a midnight showing of works in progress on that Saturday night at the end of the week. Um, I'm just going to just scroll through here. Um, There's just some images from our party with the artists who did beautiful work that night as well. Um, Sidewalk Cafe, Jazz Appreciation Month. These are the folks who were part of our night shift program. Um, Wendy Chang was our artist, one of our artists in the night shift. And that's how we met her, was through her application into the night shift. And then we hired her to do our City of Craft marketing materials and poster in December when we brought City of Craft back, which was our big sort of final 10 for 10 event. Um, and Yeah, residency, comedy is art, again, trying to bring whole new communities into the space. The work that we present. Um, so that was, it was this really important thing to come back to at the end of 10 years to say, like, what have we learned over 10 years? And a lot of what we learned over 10 years was needing to repeat ourselves, that we have uh, um, a lot of habits that we're trying to break. For instance, the fact that we don't want audiences to leave immediately after a show. It is so ingrained in audiences that, we're constantly trying, like, well, what if we put the candles here? What if we have the music louder? What if we move the tables around? Like, how do we like really make it clear that you come downstairs after the show, or you come out of the incubator after show, and we want you to stay. Um, so yeah, it's been an incredible 10 years. And it is, I think, probably one of the most important things I need to say is it's an investment. And it's an investment that requires being surrounded by supporters who believe in this vision. Because I will tell you, and it shocks people every time I tell them that the cafe, for instance, cafe bar doesn't. It's not a revenue generator. It could be if we wanted it to be a revenue generator, if that was the goal, we would rent it out to maybe Jimmy's Coffee wants another location in West Queen West, and it would just be rental revenue for us, and then they would be looking after all of those operating costs. That's not the space that we wanted. That's not what we wanted that space to be. And so it is an investment. And yes, there are moments where it evens out the costs, and but most often, because we have said to the community we want this space to be as non-transactional as possible. We did a redesign of the bar recently, beginning of 2022, after the pandemic. We installed a brand new bar, and we made sure that we put uh, sockets underneath the bar. This beautiful, beautiful bar. And like, no, plug in your laptop, stay for the day. You're welcome to do that. So you could see, and our cafe is regularly packed throughout the day. And and it could be a $300 day. And that does not necessarily cover the costs of labor. So it is an investment in that space. And one last thing that I'll say is we often are asked by our funders, what are you doing to turn your cafe goers into ticket buyers? And my question back is always, well, why is that the assumption that that's what the goal is? We have little subtle, gentle ways of trying to introduce the cafe goers and bar users, to let them know what else we do. So we have our cafe appreciation card, for instance, that, 5 coffees gets you a coffee, but 10 coffees gets you a free ticket to a show. And the number of times people say, what do you mean a show? What else do you do here? But one of the things that Franco and I both set out to do as those doors opened was to provide a third space for people. As I said, all these new residents and nowhere to gather. And so I don't, for those folks who may not know the term third space, that generally, in good sort of healthy cities and neighborhoods, people have three spaces. They have their home space, they have their workspace, and then they have their third space, this other sort of space that isn't work, it isn't home, but it's somewhere that is theirs to be. And for me, if the only need that we're meeting for some people in our community is providing a third space, then we're doing our job for that person. If they happen to become a theater goer out of that, or come to a free jazz concert, or show up at midnight on a Saturday night for 10 for 10, a night shift showing, great. I love that for them, and I love that for us, but it's not necessarily the goal. I'm going to end it there because I think I've already run over my time. Um, Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Ashlyn. That was tons of fantastic examples of the ways that you've made your space a community space. And I really love the point that you're making, that that message needs to be said over and over again in subtle ways, that folks are welcome. And it's a good reminder that even though you may feel that there's no barriers to your space physically, or it just feels very accessible to us who work in the creative field, that it may not come across or feel accessible to others who don't have a lot of experience going to the theater. So
Yeah, that was a really important learning. What that It was one of those, like, it should have been obvious. We use this term perceived barriers. I even said it in when I was talking, and it was really a wonderful board member who said, "Well, a perceived barrier is a barrier, perceived or not, real or not. If it's perceived, it's a barrier." And that is a reminder that I try to think about that regularly, to remember that anything that is a perceived barrier is a barrier that needs to be worked on.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ashlyn. Thanks for all the work you do. I'm going to move us
Thank
on,
you.
but we will have time for questions and comments later. So if anyone has questions for Ashlyn, feel free to, um, dream those up now. And but for now, I'm going to move to our next speaker. We have Sophie Hayles with us, all the way from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Thank you for being here on a different time zone outside of your probably normal workday. Sophie is the CEO of the Crescent Arts Centre and Belfast Book Festival in Belfast. I actually got connected to Sophie through a network called Future Arts Centres, which is a network of performing arts centres in the UK who also do amazing work in this area and have a lot of resources. I'll pop their link in the chat as well in a minute. But I think Sophie, similar to Ashlyn, is going to be able to share a ton of examples of what the Crescent is doing with your space. So I will turn it over to you to share.
Hi there. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to see you. Ashton, as you were talking, I picked up this book. Do you know this book? Nina Simon, The Art of Relevance. And it made me think, if you're going to open new doors, especially doors to the heart, you have to start at the front door. And I just thought what you said was just such a brilliant example of actually doing that. And then on the next page, when our institutions' offerings are too opaque or require too much effort to access, we become irrelevant. And I just thought what you said was such brilliant examples of that in practice. Folks, it's lovely to see you. My name's Sophie. I'm from the Crescent Arts Centre in Belfast. For this session, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to talk a bit about geography and context because we're in very different locations. And I have had a bit of a chat with Kaylee, but I can't pretend to know much about you. So I've tried to avoid acronyms and sort of slang in what I'm going to say, but please pop in the chat if there's anything that you don't understand or that's not clear. And I'm really keen to know if anything that I say is really obvious or reads as really different. So I'm going to start a little bit with geography and context. Forgive me if this is really obvious, but I think some things sometimes can be overlooked. So in red there is Northern Ireland, on the island of Ireland. And you can see Scotland, England and Wales there. And then to the right of the slide, you can see that I've extracted Northern Ireland and you can see where Belfast is as the capital city of Northern Ireland on that map. Kaylee mentioned their future art centres. So that's a UK-wide network. So geographically, our closest networks are the UK and Ireland, but we are, in constitutional terms, we are in the part of the UK, but closest obviously geographically to Ireland. What Kaylee said about future art centres is true. There are great resources on their website. I really like the ones on inclusive recruitment, theory of change, and there's some great stuff on fundraising and particularly individual giving. I just wanted to signpost a couple of other networks there, which might give an insight into UK and Ireland networks. I've just noted literature and dance there as specific genres, but sort of broadly they would be called resource organisations. So a couple of things on Northern Ireland. So we have the lowest per capita funding in the UK and Ireland. I don't know if this is a common advocacy tool in your part of the world, but we often talk about per capita spend that governments make on the arts. So just to give you a sense, in England it's £9.50, in Wales it's £10.50, Scotland £11, the Republic of Ireland £21, and in Northern Ireland it's £6.50. So it's not the only indicator, obviously, but it is an indicator, and it means that we operate, I would say, in a very risk-averse environment and possibly quite a sort of static environment in terms of there are not many new organisations coming into new portfolios, not many new artists having access to funding. And we've all experienced cuts, but in that kind of UK Ireland context, 66% cuts in the last 10 years in Northern Ireland versus 18 in England. So we're islands close to each other, but there's quite a big difference in how we operate. This is the second part. This is a bit about the Crescent. You can see us there. We're a charity, public funding. We're in South Belfast. I loved, Aisling, again, some of your points about honouring artists. We name a lot of our rooms after artists that have, particularly women that we feel have been overlooked. And we found that's been a really interesting way to reconnect with families and networks of contacts of those artists. Also, Ashton, you said an organisation born out of campaigning, a sort of grassroots. The Crescent has been an art centre since the 1980s, and in the 80s was the place where people went for the kind of the discos that weren't allowed, drinking that wasn't allowed during the Troubles. It was the place where different parts of the community mixed, basements, no health and safety. So a huge network of people with a lot of love for bringing a building back into what they wanted it to be. A lot of what we do is about making and doing. We have a beautiful performance space. I'll show you a picture in a minute. And we do put on theatre and dance and music, but we're also about rehearsals, the development processes, residencies, making of work. We're a really small team. I'll show you in a minute, and we're open quite a lot. I think a lot of, I mean, I don't know if that's true for a lot of art spaces, but when I tell people about our opening hours, they're often like, oh, so you're kind of open all the time. Well, yeah, at the moment we are. So this is the really practical stuff about our staff and our income model. So 30% of our turnover is from public sector. So that's our Arts Council and our local city council. That's 30% of our turnover. The majority, around 60%, is from income that we earn through the courses and workshops that we deliver, through ticket sales, through hiring out offices, through hiring out rooms. We have a small retail offer. We do some fundraising, trusts and foundations, but we're not particularly advanced in that area. So our earned income model is really key to us. A few pictures of inside the building. So top left there is our main performance space, set up as tiered, which seats 140. Below that, set up as cabaret for about 90. We have a beautiful dance studio, an art studio, a cafe space. I'm definitely stealing the Baker in Residence idea, and quite a lot of workshop spaces. The Crescent was built originally in the 1870s as a school for girls. So a lot of our spaces are essentially classrooms. This is what we do. You can see that there. I'm not going to read through that. You get a sense of what that looks like and feels like, I hope. I'm just going to chat to you briefly then about, I've chosen 3 things to talk about. One is about a pay what you decide model, a sort of a way that a ticket pricing structure. Which I suppose, again, referring back to Aislinn's language and presentation, would be a little bit about breaking habits and assumptions. The second one I'm going to talk about is, I suppose, following that line, is about forming new habits. So is about the kind of regular drop-in activity that we run. And the third one, I don't really know what to call it, and perhaps you'll help me at the end, but it's something about an approach rather than an activity. So pricing. We run a book festival as part of our year-round activities. We've got it coming up in June. Maybe I'll just quickly go back, 2022, coming out of lockdown. We'd just done a book festival online, and it was really hard work, and we were really looking forward to being back in person. But we were thinking a lot about customer behaviour and habits, and asking ourselves, would people come back? What did they want to come back for? What could they afford to do? It was around the time that the cost of living crisis was particularly affecting lives. What did we need to ask ourselves? What did we need to rethink? So we did a lot of conversations, chats, research, spoke to our regular customers, spoke to sector colleagues about pricing strategies, and in all of that we came across a pay what you decide charging structure, which set off this whole chain of conversation about value and about engagement and who gets to decide what are the assumptions that we have about what people can afford to pay for, and what does free really mean, and what does free really say. So until that point, we'd run a festival festival in which all artists were paid different amounts, usually dependent on whether they were a household name and whether they had a really bolshy agent, good agent who could demand a high fee. We do events across the city, and customers would pay anything from free to, I think, £15 was the highest ticket, but we set the prices depending on the cost to us and what we assumed the customer demand would be. It usually meant that household names were the most expensive and local poetry events were usually free. We sort of changed that around a bit and decided that all festival guests, artists would be paid the same, and that we'd upfront that in our invitation email. This is the offer. That all events would be at the Crescent in order to create a festival hub, more crossover, more cross-pollination, that customers could decide on what price they would pay for the event. So what that meant in practice is that when you booked, you could choose one of the pricing options, including free, and that was always a recommended price. I think it's worth noting that because the festival is part of our annual programme, and it was never an income generator, it never really made a significant profit, we could take a little bit of a financial risk, and we could make our approach about customer engagement, about audience development, rather than very focused on the financial model. For us, it was about dialogue, about how we engage with customers, about trying to sweep aside some perceptions. We weren't the first in Northern Ireland to do it, but we were the first festival to commit to doing it throughout the festivals. You'll imagine some of these assumptions, some of them, I guess, arguably negative, some of them positive. I mean, I could talk for hours about this scheme and the data, but I won't just now. We engaged a company to work with us on the data analysis, and we did lots of surveys and focus groups. Some key things for us is that over the 3 years, between 20 and 28% of customers booked for free. Donations went up. You can see there 29 to 2024. There's some comments from those are from our focus groups. And it was really interesting having lots of discussions with customers around people assuming that festivals were commercial models. Some people assuming that festivals don't pay artists, that artists do it for free because they're promoting a book and that they pay for travel and accommodation themselves. So it really brought up some really great conversations about how the arts sector and how the arts community is funded. And the majority of people really want guidance on what to pay, and they want more information about what they're paying for and where that money goes. And it's been really brilliant this year to do a much more sort of detailed FAQ on where the money is spent and how it's allocated, and if they donate, where that money goes. So the second thing I want to mention, so that was a ticket pricing structure. The second thing I want to mention is some habit forming stuff. We did a really detailed analysis of how our building was used. Alongside that, we did not a very scientific, but quite detailed look through the Hello at inbox of what the majority of inquiries we were getting were about. How do people want to use the space? What are customers asking us about? And we did a bit of a jigsaw of how those two things sat together. And we broadly divided it into what artists want to use the building for and the sort of non-professional, more social, community-focused use. So as part of that, we run a number of first Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the month. Tech tips is you can bring your device and come and chat about, work out how to use it. We started doing it for free, then we applied a pay what you decide. We now have quite a few regular customers paying £25 for half an hour because they love coming in for a chat, and we're friendly, and it goes into lots of conversations about what their grandkids are doing, and all their grandkids might come and see this show. So it's a really porous conversation, and I think interestingly a lot of them pay after if they like the service. A lot of them pay afterwards, and then they pay, and then they also donate because they value the the service. For artists, I think anybody that is involved in a venue will, that balance of needing to generate the income to survive and have confidence in survival, but being an art centre and being there for artists, and how you marry the two in a really confident, generous way, but also practical, that you don't set precedents just for everything being free all the time. So we block out, in our planning, we block out periods of the, and spaces in the building that are going to be available, and we just put them online monthly and say, book a space. It doesn't meet every need, but we do it for dance, for music, and for writers, and also coming up for artists using our art studio when it's not used for classes in the summer. And we've applied a pay what you decide model to that, and we found that artists are paying, and you can book regular slots, and it's created a sort of a new ecosystem for us, in that we're getting to know more about what artists are working on. They come and chat to us, they ask when the space is free. So it's a balance of not always being pushed to say, yes, you can have it for free, but finding a mechanism by which to do it. My third point, this is my sort of, I didn't quite know what to call it point, but we very much focus on quality relationships, in-depth relationships. So forgive me if this is an obvious point, but in thinking about who our neighbours are, we just did a map and did a 0.5 mile, is it circumference or radius? I always get confused. 0.5 and 1 mile. And we looked at everybody that was in that area, and we went out and had lots of conversations. And we had particularly great conversations with schools. And now we only work with schools within the 1 mile radius. And it's just quite helpful too, because when we get lots of approaches from different schools from across Northern Ireland, we can say, these are our primary partners for this period of time. They can walk to us. They come at the weekends with their parents. So there's a sense of connectivity into the area. So that was my that was the third one that I wanted to. I'm going to close there. I feel like I've got lots of other examples, but those are the three that I'm going to share, I think, in the time that I had. So I will finish there, but thank you so much for having me, and look forward to the chat after. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie. That was great. There was tons there, I think, for us to think about. I'm taking notes in all of the presentations so far. So many interesting things that I want to reflect on, but definitely the idea of thinking through your assumptions and challenging them, because I think we do. A lot of us, we're experienced in our sectors, and we jump to like what we think we can predict that our audiences and community members might do or how they'll behave. And it's worth challenging those assumptions, because we don't actually know. And you also brought up plenty of ways of doing research that's quite simple, not having to do a huge, hire a consultant and do demographic research, but just like looking at the map of who's near you, or looking through the inbox to see what kinds of questions you're getting. I think those are great prompts for folks to think about. How can you be listening to your community members in a way where you don't need to be doing a really complicated survey process all the time? I love that. Thank you so much, Sophie. And again, like I said before, we are going to come back to questions and comments. So if folks have questions or thoughts for Sophie, please percolate those. What we're going to do now is take our 5-minute bio break, and then we're going to come back. I encourage you all to stick around and come back, because Fanny Martin's going to be speaking after the break, coming from more of a festival and producer context. But Fanny also did research in the research phase of our slow touring project. So I think she's going to have a lot of interesting ideas to share with us that I'm looking forward to. So let's take 5. And as we do so, I always like to remind people, you don't have to check your email in your 5-minute break. You could just check in with yourself and, get water or get whatever you need for your body first. So I will see you all at 2:09. Thank you. All right, well, giving everyone the 1 minute warning if you're still in earshot.
Should I share my screen? Could it?
Sure, go for it.
Hold on. How? It's here. Um,
Awesome. So I'll call everyone back from our little mini break. I know most people have cameras off anyway, so I'm just gonna hope that everyone's still here and still listening. Um, Also, this image of the water and the trees is very peaceful. It's making me wish I was outside right now. Maybe that'll be my next move. Okay, so we're on to our third speaker, who I mentioned before the break. I'm really excited to have because Fanny did some specific research for us into community engagement as it applies to the touring and presenting sector, which is, of course, Ontario Presents' main purview. And so Fanny's going to be able to share some of that. She is also the founder of the strategic production company Art of Festivals, has worked on a wide variety of festivals and other projects in Canada and across Europe. And you are now the executive director of the Music Biennale Zagreb in Croatia. Hopefully, I have that right. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Fanny, to talk to us about community engagement.
Super. Thank you so much, Kenny. I'm so happy to be here. Yes, I worked with you on the first phase of imagining what is slow touring and how it can take place, how it can take shape in Canada. And so here I'm just starting with a view from where I live now. After many years, I'm from France, as you may hear. I do have a strong accent still after all these years. And I've lived in the UK and Canada for the past 20 years. So now I am in Zagreb, Croatia. This is not what you imagine it is. It's just a little lake in a city park. It's not one of those, views of Croatia that actually I haven't seen yet because I am working. That's the typical curse. I've been once to the coast. I've been here 1 year and I was tasked with re-energizing the festival. I have a 5-year strategic plan, basically. I will talk a little bit about the festival, but not too much because it's not really our focus. And then I want to talk more about community and engagement. And I made up a title for my session, which is based on what I reacted to most when I thought about what I can share is this idea, of course, of community. And when I think community, I think of Peter Block, who's a great author and researcher and facilitator on community. He has a book which I really recommend, which is quite short and very practical, called Community, the Structure of Belonging. So belonging is really this key principle, like why do we want communities and what does community do? So he talks very well about this, and something that I love to use in my work, in this idea of making work simpler, easier, jargon-free, is to think of invitation. Like even instead of marketing, I think invitation. Who are we inviting? How are we inviting them? What's the party? Who are the guests? How to be a good host, all that kind of language. I find it really useful to break away from our assumptions, actually, and our, kind of dead jargon. And so I'll start with the quotes by Peter Block in this book. It says, invitation is not only a step in bringing people together, it is also a fundamental way of being in a community. It manifests the willingness to live in a collaborative way. And I think of all the various types of invitations that Aislinn and Sophie mentioned and manifested physically through their building, through their campaigns, all these things. Like this invitation is an ethics. It's a way of being. It manifests our values. And so we invite people to be in community in a certain way. And so I'll just slide through a few pictures of my recent festival, for a bit of context, and so we will see audiences as well, because this is really what we managed to do with my team this year, is to bring the audience back to this festival, which was established in 1961. So it is really like a very special case. It's a legacy festival. It was created during the Cold War in Yugoslavia. And so it's been through many, many changes, as you can imagine, changes of regime. Recently, Zagreb had an earthquake as well as COVID. And so there was really kind of this desire for a form of comeback. And so you see here a bit of design in the public space. We'll show spaces basically that we use during the festival. We somehow linked it with this abandoned hospital, which is a great site of urban exploration. But what we did with this was to connect with a theater maker who is creating at the moment a documentary about this kind of giant political scandal, basically. And so with connecting with a very well-respected, politically leaning theater maker, we're also signaling that it's not just music, because the event, of course, is about contemporary and experimental music, but how do we flesh it out and how do we bring different people in the conversation? So that was one thing we did before the festival, organizing a walk. There's a reason for it that I'm not going to go into. This is the opening night, so you can see the contrast as well. This is the National Theatre, which is like a mini Viennese opera house. We had 3 contemporary ballets in there, 3 creations. Then this is an installation. We had a few of those as well, so more like mixing art and science, music and science. We had different formats for concerts, and also very good photographers. We can say that. We had this, using a lot of spaces. This is the dance center, where usually there is contemporary dance, the lovely little black box. And here we have a solo harpsichord with electronics. Because everything in contemporary music now has electronics. So it's always interesting to make, just this contrast of space. This is an ancient instrument, but with that modern exploration of it. And we are in a space of movement as well. So all these contrasts, this doesn't necessarily bring a dance audience to the concert, but it brings a different feel. It's a different home, basically, for this temporary community. Just showing you the concert hall at the Symphony Hall, which is a 1,800 seats venue, like proper Yugoslavian brutalist building, and we managed to film half of it, which is exceptional for contemporary music, about 900 people. This is a club. It's called Močvara. It means swamp. So really high contrast in everything we did. This is an Afro-Portuguese electronic dance duo. And then I just wanted to end this quick slideshow with a picture of community, like we see people actually talking here. And this was part of our pre-program. And that's something that we used a lot to, like I showed the hospital walk, connecting with the theater community. Here we connected with also different types of interests. This was a partnership with a design magazine, or like a magazine, and also like a alternative space. I don't know how to describe it because it's such a different reality. It's an alternative space. I don't know how else to call it now. But all these, I think, signaled a lot of openness. Everybody welcome here, mixing the interest groups and mixing the age groups as well. During the festival, we also had entire classes coming to concerts because their teacher was taking them. So I just want to say that we are in a different context. For sure, Croatia is 4 million people. That's the total population of Croatia. Zagreb is a capital of 800,000 people. It's a really small capital. And it's a region that is actually quite difficult to navigate. I mean, there's not that many train links, for example. So there's different challenges that are just require different strategies, essentially. And so for this year, we really went for a local audience and trying to really appeal to a broad interest for contemporary culture. And it worked. It was really well attended. So yeah, that's kind of it about the festival. My goal for this year was to re-energize, and that was like a red line, basically a through line for everything we did. What brings energy? And this idea of the invitation. Also, I have to say that we gave away a lot of tickets. I think we sold like nothing. That's also a very different context. We do not need to make money on box office. So you would think it makes it easier, but actually giving away, if people don't want to come, they will not come. And we had to think as well about pricing and perception. And I really wanted to go for low, and then explaining that it's subsidized, basically. And so for me, that really worked. We had prices at €5 for daytime, so that would be like 8 Canadian dollars, and 10 for evening, and then a bit more at the door to encourage people to buy online, etc. It was so cheap, actually, that I think that's a barrier that is not to be discussed. And then we did a lot of work on, basically kind of cultivating the local VIPs, I would say, and really trying to understand who's got influence, who likes to be invited. Well, it turns out everyone. And so how can we do this invitation with, maybe a sense of reciprocity, or, maybe that comes next as well. Maybe I'll slide here that one of the biggest challenges I have in my role is the question of regional networks. So that means the Balkans and ex-Yugoslavia at large, because it's a world that is very disconnected. And there's only invitation that can work to do this. We need to invite people. So we paid for their hotel, etc., to come as observers, as friends, as guests. This is the fundamental first step. Sometimes is to generously invite people, open the door and say, check it out, no pressure, it's your space. This is just a little credential list, just to make the link back to my Canadian experience, and to also, we will probably work with so many people, I'm sure, in common with people in the virtual room right now. But my work has had a lot of community leanings over the years. So I was more in music in my early career, and then in Canada, really a lot of networks, research, trying to understand, how to develop practice and policy, this kind of thing. So this is what brings me now to this challenge at Music Biennale Zagreb. There's just a little interlude, because I want to go into something a little bit more maybe theoretical, or like a form of takeaway for closing my presentation. It's to ask you questions about, well, the first one is, how do you define community? And again, in a simple kind of way, not going into jargon, not going into how other people define it, but I think the concept of mapping is really important. So you can define community in so many different ways. We often say community of, and I've listed a few here that are really not exhaustive at all. Community of place, of interest, of practice, circumstance, identity, care, or action. I mean, there can be so many more. Age, many more. And so you can actually define this creatively, or people can also tell you where they feel they belong to, because the first belonging is to a community. So how do you create a space where different communities can belong? That's the second question. Actually, why do you want to bring communities together? And again, that would be your answer. But I think this is a really good question to ask yourself when you strategize. you know, when you want to do your invitation campaigns, not marketing, when you are thinking about what you will do for them, for example. And it's a bit like if we go to a simple, you know, like everyday kind of level metaphor, if you invite people to a wedding, there will be the groom side, you know, the two sides of the people getting married, the families, the friends, you know, there's different circles essentially, and they are linked together. Let's just be a bit corny, maybe through love, you know, like it's celebrating someone's love, etc. Why do you want to bring communities together in your space? And maybe it's also something to leave open to what they want to do with it. I've put here a quote by Peter Block as a cheat, basically, because it's a nice quote. He says, it is the challenge, but you know, I use it as an answer to this question, to transform the isolation and self-interest within our communities into connectedness and caring for the whole. I really like this idea that by bringing people together, we're not negating their self-interest. Actually, I mean, isolation is another question. Self-interest is important, and this is what motivates people, but how do we also have this ability to grasp the complexity and to care for the whole? And so to pursue our own interests and understand as well that, you know, we live in society, we live together. Where's the third way into this as well? How do we create out of this maybe tension between different types of communities? And the third question is actually a bit of a checklist. What do you need to plan an invitation to belong? So this idea of bringing people together with a wide open invitation to be themselves or to find a way for them to be together. The first is to collect meaningful information. So I've put here evaluation and active listening are really powerful tools of engagement to always carry throughout. And evaluation can be simple, creative, it can be bespoke, it can be, as long as it's something that you can maintain, essentially, and that brings you the information that you can work with. Here, I put something about being ready to respond to core community needs. If you invite people, do you have, you know, enough to feed them, etc.? But in terms of community needs, there are three big ones that I've listed here. The need to gather, the need for togetherness. And here, one filter question for this could be, how easy is it to come in? And Aislinn and Sophie talked a lot about this. What are the barriers? How open is the door actually? Exchanging, and this is a reference to Peter Block. He talks a lot about gifts within the community, but you can also think of dialogue as an exchange, something that we offer to each other. And here, a kind of filter question that I've put is, how easy is it to be heard for someone who comes into your space? How can they say what they think, what they feel? Is anyone asking them the question? Is there a way to express? So because there's no exchange without reciprocity. And the third one is, how easy is it to help? This is a tricky one because this idea of, you know, caring and ownership, like in a community, a sense of ownership really contributes to belonging. But what we care for, and it's ownership in the sense of caring, and what we care for, we want to do something about. And so how can people help without being a nuisance, basically? And, you know, this is tricky, I think, but it can be something that really makes a difference in how people feel included. And then top tip, keeping track of relationships. This is a biodatabase, which again can be as complex or as simple as it needs to be, but this is about keeping track of your relationships. And I would say keeping track of promises as well. And so to make it a bit more technical, I've called it the infrastructure of belonging. Maybe that's good for a grant application, because you really need a good database system that is widely shared across your organization, and needs to be ways for, you know, if people express needs or opinions, how is that circulated? How is it responded to? That's just a basic example. And to finish, I have another image. which is not at all in Zagreb. This is in Marseille. But I was looking for an image of a window, this kind of one, because I want to talk about very briefly the concept of window of opportunity. This is something that I'm really experimenting with, I think, in Zagreb. I'm here as an outsider, the only international person ever to not be in Croatia, but to work for this specific organization that I work with. And so I really need to use my status as an outsider. I have a window of opportunity. So I will not stay more than 3 or 4 years, for example, because after that, I'm old news and I will become one of them and I will start gossiping like they do, etc. So I need to keep my status as an outsider fresh for a certain time. This is just an example that you can use for yourself as what is your window of opportunity when you are engaging in a slaughtering process, for example, when you're inviting a residency, when you are launching a new program. Actually, are you ready to really launch it and to really receive people inside, to receive their opinions? When you are doing something, like you can't do it halfway. In my opinion, is being ready and listening, and being also very open that this is a dialogue. This is ongoing. That's it for me. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Fanny. Tons of stuff there as well. And I love hearing about the festival context because it's a very condensed kind of opportunity to really create community and create those spaces. And so there's a lot of good examples that come out of that. I also liked what you said about how easy is it to help? Sometimes we forget about that angle that people want to be involved and take ownership over things. And that's another way that they can feel belonging and feel welcomed in addition to just feeling invited in. I love all of that. So now we have about half an hour left for questions, discussions, thoughts, and I am going to welcome anyone who's here if you have a question, either to raise your Zoom hand or put your question in the chat, whatever you like. But first, I want to go to our 3 speakers, Aislinn, Sophie, and Fanny, just to check if anything anyone else said sparked something for you that you wanted to comment on or respond to. Sophie.
Yeah, definitely. There's very much a conversation, certainly in the UK, about free tickets and what free means. And I think finally challenging the assumption that free equals people will come. So I wanted to ask then, and also this idea that I often see organisations and festivals talking about community tickets, and I don't know what that means. And because as Fanny was talking about, I think we all have different understandings and experiences of what community means to us. So seeing the word community tickets, I think often is this sort of weird sort of wraparound of economic affordability, but you're asking people to put themselves in a position where they need to ask for free tickets, which is where some of our pay what you decide came from, because you're not asking people to ask you for tickets, you're creating an equal booking system for everybody. So it was really interesting to hear Fanny's point in particular about reciprocity and what that might mean for free tickets. And also that free means is different in your context, because you need to make, in some instances, you need to make things free in order for people to come. So I love the discussion around what free means, because it's economic free, but it's also got lots of other things attached to it. So I'm so sorry, that wasn't really a question, but a comment to Fanny. And then also I would love to ask Aislinn how the ticketing works in her venue.
Go for it.
Sorry, Fanny, that wasn't very helpful, but you really made me think.
Yeah. Go for it, Aislinn.
Yeah, go for it, Aislinn, and then maybe I'll come back to you, Fanny.
I was nodding along with a lot of both of you speaking about ticketing and free tickets, and then that the free tickets is not a guarantee that people will attend. And I would say over the last 3 programming years, we have experimented with 3 different ticketing models for this very reason. So one of the first years sort of where we were back in person after pandemic lockdown periods, we went with an entirely free year of programming. Like, that's it. Everything's just going to be free. People can donate if they want to, but like everything is free. You can book your tickets online in advance free. And uh I hated it. I was like, we're never doing this again. It was one of those, like, there's 2 sides of the capitalist coin, in that even though, a lot of our audience might consider themselves anti-capitalist, there is a there we just it's so ingrained in us that it's if it's free, it doesn't have value. And on the other side of that coin, if it's free, if I don't feel like going that night, it won't matter. And so we would sell out. We would put shows up for sale, and people would book tickets immediately. They would be sold out for, weeks in advance. And then on the night, despite us saying, like, please let us know if you're not coming, please let us know if you're not coming, um, we would, have half an audience. And I just thought, I don't, well, that wasn't the way. I don't want to do it that way ever again. It means smaller houses for our artists. And I don't believe that free means no value, but I feel like that's what is the vibe. And so the following year we did pay what you want. And we had a range of tickets prices, and people could choose what they wanted. And they started, I think, at $5. And I think we topped out at $60. I mean, the theater center has traditionally had some of the cheapest seats in the city. $60 in some theater venues is like the lowest price that you can get. And so we had, I think it was either 5 or 10, and then like 15. I think we did it actually I can't remember what the increments were, but they went up to 60. And we found by far the cheapest ticket was the most popular, but then the second most popular was the $60 ticket. And so people were either like, I can afford the least amount. And then those who were like, no, I can afford more, like really went for the highest price. And but I don't think we didn't necessarily see that it was bringing more people. It didn't sort of translate immediately into people are finding this really accessible and therefore coming. And so we thought we would try one more thing. So this current year, we went back to a very standard ticket price of $30. All tickets are $30. Which then lets us create discount codes, because people love a discount code. They love a, like, oh, here's a 50% off discount code, or if you're in this, like, give your friends this code, or whatever. And then we also have it on our site, and this is where community tickets come in. Great question. We said we have it's written there. Price should not be a barrier to anyone. Email the box office and ask for a free ticket or a half price ticket, no questions asked, and you can get 2 per show. And so we get emails from people just saying, can I have a free community ticket? Yep, here you go. And we're finding that's working really well. And the other thing you can do when you buy a ticket is you can pay it forward. So if you buy a $30 ticket, you can also buy a pay it forward ticket, so that kind of does a bit of subsidizing work of our free tickets. But I would always rather give away tickets than have an empty seat in the house. Always, always, always. So we'll know how that goes at the end of this year, but it seems to be going really well. We've been selling out short runs of things in advance of opening for a few of our events. So I would say it's going well, this version.
Thank you, Aislinn. I wanted to quickly, before I go to this question in the chat, Fanny, did you want to comment on this topic as well around tickets? I know your context is a bit different because it sounds like revenue's not, a priority.
Yes, who would have thought so? But yes, we're very well funded. And, it's contemporary and experimental music, so there is an audience, but it tends to be small. And so we really needed to go for, it's not about choosing the ensemble, the composer, whatever that you know and you like. It's about getting really triggered by curiosity. And so this is really where this notion of invitation for me kicks in, is to think, how inviting is it actually? Do you need to know anything? There's just so many things. But we really gave away a lot of passes and tickets, and that was to create a rumor, I would say. Like, it was essential to pack up the venues because then it creates this energy. And so we will continue to do this. Like, there's no, again, financial limitation really, but it's a very different context. It's fascinating really, when we think of the value of culture, how much, perception we have around money, around quality, around credentials, etc. It's my model actually in terms of money and pricing was more Viennese Biennale, because you go in, the pavilion section, you pay something like 35 euros and you can see actually very expensive contemporary art from all around the world. Everybody knows it's very expensive. And when you go to an exhibition in a museum, it's very expensive and you're only paying a fraction of this. And this is really what I wanted to also give as a, like this idea that you're buying a tiny bit off, but there's nothing to do with the exhibition or the experience in itself. Like, it's really a way of separating money from the products. It's just a sort of convenience. It's like just putting a coin in. And that's why our tickets are very cheap. But I think this idea that, it opens up as well. That's what people do with subscriptions, I guess, as well. This idea that you pay a little bit and then you're welcome to try everything. This kind of thing where, people then are guided again by their curiosity and not necessarily by exactly what it is. There's trust in what is being offered to them. And then they can make decisions based on other factors, like, is this a convenient time for me? Which, that's usually how I choose shows. It's like, oh, I can go, so I will go. And so that it's, and we can't really do here big studies about, price perception or would people pay more, etc. It's also not really the kind of setting. So it's quite intuitive. And what we did, I will just say this as well. I think pricing is political. Here there's a massive inflation in Croatia. And so we made it clear that it was a price freeze. We kept the same prices exactly as 2 years ago. And everything goes up. Like, price of life must have gone by 25% in the past 4 or 5 years. We kept the same prices. And just that, I think, also makes it more of a civic conversation. And again, it removes this, closeness of price and art, money and arts. We're just saying, like, art has no price.
Yeah, this topic is so interesting because I feel in a lot of the conversations around slow touring and a lot of the conversations we have in our sector in general, we encounter this tension between art should be free and available to everyone, and we don't want to be confined to a capitalist structure for something that is inherently outside of capitalism, art and creativity, meets we really think artists should be paid fairly and well and should be able to live, and we want people to perceive art as having value. So I really appreciate all of the different considerations that all three of you have brought forward in that area. I'm going to go to Annie's question, but super quick. Sarah asked in the chat, Fanny, you say you're well funded, but does that include budgets for these invitations as well?
Yeah, we don't have to bring revenue basically from box office. And something I did this year as well, and this is a very festival thing to do, but I also had a specific budget to invite professionals. And again, this was the first time in the festival's history. We had 40 professionals, mainly from Europe, like curators, etc. And that's another type of community. It's your professional community, basically, and they do other things. They propagate your influence, or they give you feedback, or there's many benefits to it as well. So I think whenever possible, it's good to invite people to actually have, this VIP feeling, being invited. I mean, that's what I live for. That's why I invite people, basically, that they can reciprocate. But yes, it does need to be a resource. I mean, it's an investment, I would say, like literally being able to invite people. There is a return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay, so this question is open. So if any of the three of you want to jump in on it, that would be great. Annie says, I'm wondering if/how you facilitate the integration of artists touring to your destination with your communities or coming in for a residency program, especially if there are cultural and/or language barriers. I find that as a touring artist, we sometimes just breeze through itineraries without actually anchoring ourselves in the community or territory we're visiting. Just want to say I love this question. This is like a huge section of what slow touring means to me. And I also have resources I'll throw in the chat. But Aislinn, it looks like maybe you want to jump in there.
I'm sure. This is the question. I we think about it from both directions because we bring work in and we tour work out, and it's so often the case that it's the only thing that is funded is arrive, set up, do your show, tear it down, and go. And I remember in 2020, right before, like we had a festival at the theater center with summer works called Progress. We don't do it anymore, sadly. We don't have enough funding for it. But we were bringing Scotty from the UK to do his shows, Working Class Dinner Party and Class, and two works deeply looking at class and right off just something that you just said, Kaylee, like I don't think there's anything about art and the way that art gets made in this country that is in any way separated from capitalism. But anyway, that's another conversation. And when we were bringing Scotty, um, Scotty was talking about two or three other projects that he was working on that would benefit from conversations with local community in Toronto. And so when we were applying for funding to bring the work in, there used to be now I'm trying to remember it was British Council used to have money for us to bring artists from the UK. That doesn't exist anymore. But at the time it did. And we went to them for travel and accommodation support for the week of shows and then a second week to just stay and be in conversation with community and have space in our building to develop like push the development forward. And the question that we got was, why does he need these extra days? And I said, well, because he's going to make work while he's here. He's going to be in conversation with local artists and local community members. These conversations are going to be part of these new works. And they said, oh, he doesn't need that. We'll just fund you for the dates themselves. And this is constantly what happens. And any level of funding is usually around like, what is the bare minimum that you need to make this happen? And anytime we've ever, and this includes us touring out, included like a proper dream in what we're asking for, those applications are unsuccessful. So I don't have a good answer for you here, because we see the need, the desire. When we bring artists in, I want them to have a lasting impact on the community that they're coming into. And when we go out, I want to have a lasting impact on the community that we're meeting. And that's the goal, that's the desire. And I think, I was so happy to hear that Capicoa was working on this slow touring piece, because it was one of those things where The need is there, the ideas are there, but once again, our funders are about 10 to 20 years behind on this thinking, and how do we get them to catch up?
Yeah, thank you, Aislinn. That's so huge. I will say in the past year of supporting through Ontario Presents, supporting pilot projects in slow touring, I'm writing up my reports right now, and so my head is full of this. I'm hearing from artists when they had the opportunity to stay longer in community. I'm hearing things like my creative work was better. It was the best show that we performed on that tour. I felt really present. I didn't get sick after the tour. I didn't need a full week to recover from tour. I only needed a day or two. Like these are really real things.
Yeah.
You know, even more personal and emotional things like I was able to process grief or whatever else was going on in my life. I had time and space to deal with that. Folks who are parents had time to bring their child on tour and stay connected as a family. I mean, there's like myriad benefits. I'm hoping that I can publish something maybe that will be a useful resource for to point funders towards in the future to say, listen, there are so many benefits. Um, Fanny or Sophie, no pressure, but did you either of you want to jump in on this question?
Just maybe a little, it's not provocation, but just to flip a little bit the question, do you want artists to integrate in your community or to be these visiting guests in the community? I mean, they're just turning it into the community as host. And maybe that's a different type of resource as well. Maybe it doesn't come from the kind of, top-down arts funding, but maybe there are resources to be used locally. Like I did something with a jazz festival in the UK a few years ago. We were trying to find how they could do more commissioning, basically, which means having more residencies. And we invited local residents with a spare bedroom. This was a little bit pre-Airbnb, but just to offer their spare bedroom, you know, if it was like decent, etc. Because not all artists want to stay, at someone's place. But it's a small city in the north of England, so that was one way that we started thinking about it. I actually don't even know if it really took off, but it was this idea of how do we make artists stay longer, so they can. This context of festival and jazz, but maybe the resources are different and maybe the community can become a host. That's to explore, because yeah, if there's no more funding coming for it, then there needs to be a bypassing of the barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, this is a complete side note, but Devanshi, do you want to put what you just sent me into the group chat? Because I did ask her to look into Sophie, when you were talking about what is the investment in the arts per capita in different parts of the UK, it got me curious to see if we have numbers for Canada. And this is just a partial, I think, and possibly old stats. But thank you so much for finding that. Um, just very interesting. Ontario, dramatically low level of funding for the arts. So for Sophie and anyone else that's not in Canada, obviously Canada's divided into provinces, and some chunk of the arts funding happens provincially. So very interesting side note. We have a few minutes left. Are there any other questions or comments from folks? I'm trying to lean into the awkward silence. I'm not good at it. Annie, I can turn it over to you.
I don't know if you can hear me very well
Oh,
because I'm in a public space.
You've got a lot of background noise. Do you
Okay,
want
wait.
to type?
I'll type it in.
Okay, thank you. Interesting, Sophie. Thank you for putting that in. Yeah, it does go to show that there's huge variation in.
I've been wanting these numbers. I was trying to find similar numbers like federally as well in for various things recently. And yeah, we don't have very good data. And I think I do think these provincial numbers are also old.
They are,
And
yeah.
I think our like local Toronto numbers are old. Um,
Yeah, it looks like this is 2011, and we in Ontario know that in 2019, Doug Ford's government made massive cuts in Ontario to funding in the arts. It's the reason a lot of our programs are, I say our, like a lot of our organizations that I know are present here had big
Yeah.
cuts.
Maybe while we wait for the question, I just want to give a contrast, in this, because I was in Canada a long time, so I know you will understand how myself I am shocked. But here at the festival I'm running, it's such a national, institution, jewel in the crown, etc., that during the festival we were convoked, myself and the arts directors, to go and meet the president of Croatia, who received us in his residency, which was built for Tito. It's a very, very grand. So we're really we're brushing with power absolutely all the time. And for me, it's really fascinating when we start talking about policy, etc. And of course, I'm in a capital as well, so we've got a lot of dealings with diplomats, ambassadors, etc. So I'm really trying to understand, what does that do, all these questions of influence, power, how do we get more of what we need? How do we, whisper the right words into their ear? All that stuff.
Yeah, big question. And so Annie had a comment in the chat, and I'll read it out just in case. Wishful thinking. I'm hoping one day we'll be able to compensate the ecological cost of transportation for touring with better social impacts / longer presence in the communities and territories we visit. I mean, absolutely. This question around the ecological impact of touring has come up a lot in slow touring, and I'm super interested in it. Climate justice is one of my main motivators for creating this program in the first place. But something I often think about is how the artist touring is the smallest part of the climate impact, and audience travel is often the biggest when we're talking about transportation, especially. So, in fact, having an artist go places and spend time with the community and helps create a cultural experience at home where people don't have to travel far away to get that. I think that actually has a positive climate impact. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
I just to say this is exactly the thinking behind trying to get, more meaningful touring opportunities together again. Like, why are you touring beyond this, oh, I want to take this show somewhere, having really strong rationale for us, like really strong rationale for why this piece needs to come and why our artists and our audiences need to meet these artists. And same with why are we going out beyond oh, it would be nice to tour a show. And so, as work, I look at Loss by Ian Kamau that was developed in residency with us over a 9-year period. That was 9 years in which Ian thought incredibly rigorously about who this piece was for, and then where those audiences are and how do we get this piece to those audiences. And so, for instance, in January, we were able to take it to the Apollo in New York City. And thank God that was in January, because I would not be taking that show and those artists into the United States now. But that came out of 9 years of rigorous, who is this for? And then where will we find those people?
Yeah, really great questions to ask. Doing things with a lot of intention. That seems to be underlining a lot of slow touring as well. Not just going everywhere that you can as quick as you can, but doing things with intention. Okay, we've just got a couple of minutes left, so let's make this perhaps our last question. Oriana in the chat asks, do you see any connection to virtual spaces and events with your physical communities, or is it 100% in person? Just curious, when we also gather online, how it connects or not physical space. Yeah, this is a big question. Do any of the three of you want to jump in on that?
I could, but I keep doing that, so I'll leave it to Sophie or Fanny.
It's really far away right now from my thinking. I think, yeah, my focus is on hyperlocal and then regional and then international with different scales basically. But I think online has left my space after COVID, I have to admit. And I'm not even sure that, the festival having an Instagram account constitutes any form of online community. So I think it's really next level, to really think online community. It's totally doable, but it's a venue, basically. It's operating a venue.
Right, it's
Oh.
its whole own thing in a way. Yeah, absolutely. I say go for it, Aislinn, if you want to share your thoughts.
I would say I've spent the last couple of years really thinking about why do we gather and the value of doing that in person because of those years where we couldn't. So a number of the pieces that we've presented in recent years don't exist without an audience. So the 8-hour video game epic performance, Asses Masses, if there's no one in the audience to play the game together, there's no show. And bringing work.text from the UK that is entirely performed by the audience, if the audience doesn't if they're not there, there's no show. And I keep thinking, and I say this often, like, what is the offer? Like, it's so easy to stay home, and I am a perfect example of that. Like, if I don't have to leave my apartment, I don't. I am a stay-at-home person. It's so easy to stay at home. I love my home. TV is really good. Trashy novels, really good. And so, what am I not getting though because I'm staying home? What can I get, and what can we get when we gather together physically in a space that we can't get otherwise? And then to thank the people, like to honor the fact that people made this much more like cumbersome decision to leave their home and join you somewhere. What is the offer then that you're making to say thank you? Here's what we have for you. This is how we honor this choice. And even if that's like the event, that our September 10 for 10 event that was supposed to be a panel, and I realized I didn't want to do a panel. I just wanted to talk about how in despair I was about the world. And I asked people to come and eat soup with me and talk about despair. And the number of people who like came out immediately to eat soup with us and talk about despair and hope, that what we were able to do that night and the conversation that we had that night together as community, and neighbors saying like this is the only place in the neighborhood that feels like community. We that I don't think that would is possible online. I don't think it's possible online.
Yeah. Well, it's 3 o'clock. There's so much on this topic that I'd love to say. So I hope that we get to keep having these conversations. But I have to wrap us up. So I really want to say a huge thank you to Aislinn, to Sophie, to Fanny, and to Veronica, who's had to head out. But I really appreciate you all sharing your thoughts and ideas. I hope it triggered some inspiration here and the different ways that we can yeah, be more open to community and think of art spaces as community spaces, as public spaces, like Aislinn said. And um I think in the world that we're living in, like you were just saying, Aislinn, that opportunity for connection is more important than ever. Or maybe we always say that, but it's very important. um I know we're past time, but just for anyone that's interested, I wanted to share what's coming up next in the slow touring world. If anyone's curious, I put a link in the chat to a YouTube playlist. This is a playlist of short videos where we're highlighting the slow touring projects we've done in the past year, which are wide ranging. There's 3 so far, and we're going to keep publishing them every couple of weeks. You can also get those on the Ontario Presents social media and our newsletter, all of that's at our website. I am going to be hosting some in-person slow touring conversations. They are coming up in May and June in Brantford, Toronto, Belleville, and Ottawa. I'm going to send an email to this email list, but if anyone's interested in joining to meet some folks that have been working on slow touring, have lunch together and chat, please reach out and let me know. My email is there as well. we are also going to be talking about art centers as community spaces at the Ontario Presents Spring Retreat in Collingwood at the end of May. Aislinn's going to be there with us, along with Franco Boni, her collaborator at the Theatre Centre. So I think that's going to be awesome. If anyone's in Ontario and wants to join for that, that's a bit of a bigger in-person gathering. Ontario Presents is so excited to be supporting to kind of more fulsome slow tours in the upcoming seasons. We'll eventually be publishing stuff on how that goes. And as always, I'm available to talk about this topic because I'm super passionate about it. So reach out to me anytime if you're interested. Thanks again to the Canada Council for the Arts for funding this workshop series and our entire slow touring project for the past year and a half of pilot projects. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate you. Have a great Wednesday afternoon or late evening for Sophie and Fanny.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.